Okay, I'm going to teach you guys these next two fetters. The second fetter is doubt. I'm going to teach you what this is, the symptoms of it, how to eliminate it, and how to know that you've eliminated it. And then we'll talk about wrong behavior and observances. This will be the three fetters that you need in order to get to that first stage of enlightenment. I taught personal existence view yesterday evening, and now doubt, and then wrong behavior and observances. These are the three fetters that need to be eliminated, along with other things that an individual would need to do to be able to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So as you guys have questions, just let me know. So first, what is doubt? Doubt is where the mind has doubt about the teachings of the Buddha. This is a common thing that people come to the path with, is where the mind doubts whether or not these teachings will even lead to enlightenment. You might have doubt about the Buddha, about the teachings. You might have doubt about this community that you're part of. You might have doubt about your teacher and their ability to help you get to enlightenment. You might even have doubt about your ability to get to enlightenment. Like, can you really do it? You might have that doubt in your mind. So this is this particular fetter. And if there's doubt in the mind, it's going to hinder an individual from being able to get to enlightenment. So the symptoms of this is that the mind can be complacent, it can lack confidence, it can be continuing to search for a spiritual life and or teachers, where you're just kind of going around looking for community after community, teacher after teacher after teacher. You can be judging your teacher, kind of looking at this person in a very judgmental way and trying to figure out whether they're enlightened or not, looking down on them. There could even be bitterness and hostility towards a teacher when somebody comes in with a significant amount of doubt. You can even be judging yourself when you're making the smallest little mistakes or smallest little missteps on the path. You can be judging yourself and looking down on yourself, beating yourself up in degrading and diminishing ways because you have this doubt about whether or not you can actually get to enlightenment. You can be argumentative towards your teacher or others in the community because you have doubt about the teachings of that particular community. So this doubt in the mind is going to hinder an individual from being able to fully investigate and examine the teachings, to reflect on them, to independently verify them, and then to practice them and experience the real results. Because why would you learn and practice something if you have doubt in it? So if you have doubt, that's normal. People come to the path to enlightenment with doubt. It's a normal thing. You don't have to feel shameful or anything like this. But the way you get rid of doubt is not through blind belief or faith or anything like that. The way you get rid of this doubt is you investigate the teachings. By investigating the teachings and examining them, as you learn them, you investigate them and examine them, you reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or false, and you start practicing the teachings, you're going to start seeing the condition of the mind gradually improve. Because as you learn, investigate, and examine, you're going to be like, wow, this looks really interesting. Intellectually, you're going to have a certain understanding. But then when you start reflecting on the teachings to independently verify them, you're going to be able to see that they're true to a certain degree as you're independently verifying them through your reflection. But then when you start practicing the teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life, and actually experiencing the results of an improved condition of your mind, improved relationships, your life is improving, that's where you're going to build the confidence in these teachings. And you'll know with 100% certainty, eventually you'll get to a point where there's no doubt, and you'll know that these teachings are leading to enlightenment. You won't be enlightened by the time you get rid of your doubt, but you will have had significant progress to the point where you'll know that it's these teachings that are leading to your enlightenment. And that comes through investigation and examination of the teachings, not through blind belief or faith or anything like that. So what you would like to develop is this confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, and your own ability to get to enlightenment. And as you're doing that, when you get to the point where you see the improvement of the condition of the mind, that's how you'll know that your mind is moving in the direction of getting rid of this doubt, because you'll see that the condition of the mind in your life is improving. So it's through investigation and examination of the teachings that you're going to eliminate this doubt. And the way to know that your doubt has been eliminated is that you'll have confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, and your own ability to get to enlightenment. So, for example, if you went down to immigration and you were waiting in the waiting room of the immigration police or whatever, and you're waiting for a visa, and you're sitting there reading a book about Buddhism, and someone's like, what's that book all about? And you're like, oh, this is about the Buddhist teachings. And if they're like, oh, those don't work, and in your mind, you're going to know, like, yes, they do, right? Whether you say anything to this person or have any kind of conversation is a choice for you to make. But in your mind, if you've been practicing these teachings closely through your investigation and examination and then your practice, and you've seen the progress and improvement to the mind, you're going to know in your mind, like, no, they absolutely work. You're going to be confirmed in that. You're going to have that confirmed confidence. You'll know without a shadow of a doubt that this individual, Siddhartha Gautama, lived life. Because the more you understand his teachings, you'll see his teachings everywhere around you. He has a teaching where he says, one who sees me sees the teachings. One who sees the teachings sees me. What he means by this is that one who sees me sees the teachings, meaning if you live during the lifetime of the Buddha, he's a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings, that whatever he teaches, that's what he's practicing too. But then the part where he says, one who sees the teachings sees me, what he means by that is if you understand the teachings well enough, you'll go out into the world and you'll see the teachings everywhere. You'll see impermanence everywhere. You'll see discontentedness. You'll see people having craving, desire, attachment, craving for things to be a certain way. You'll see people getting discontent, but you'll also see people having loving kindness and compassion. You'll see people practicing generosity, and you'll see the wholesome Dhamma as a result. You'll watch the news very differently when you understand these teachings. You'll see the Dhamma in these situations, the cause and effect. That's essentially what the news is it's a daily reporting of the natural law of Dhamma in a particular community. They're just saying, hey, these are the things that happened, but you'll be able to see the cause and effect that led to those particular things. So by the time you eliminate your doubt, you'll have this confirmed confidence in the Buddha, knowing that he actually lived and that he shared his teachings. You'll have confidence in his teachings. You'll have confidence in the community because you're learning from more than just your teacher. You're learning from other community members too, just through observing. Not through direct learning, right? But maybe when we went to Hua Tung Tao yesterday, maybe somebody was generous or kind or polite, and you were like, wow, I really like the way that person was doing that. Maybe I'm going to start doing a little bit of that. So when you're around fellow community members who are practicing the teachings, it's going to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. And when you see that this community is practicing the teachings well, that we're being respectful to each other, we're being polite and kind and friendly to each other, you can see that people take care of the temple. People come in and they take out the trash, they sweep, they clean the bathrooms. When you see people contributing and practicing generosity, you're like, wow, this community is really practicing the teachings well. You'll get that confirmed confidence in them because you have learned things from just observation of observing fellow community members. And then you'll eventually get to confidence in your teacher because any improved condition of mind or condition of your life that you're experiencing through these teachings, it came from a teacher. A certain teacher has helped you to do that. And having gotten to that point where you see that improved condition of your mind in your life, you're going to know it's that teacher that helped you to be able to do that. So you'll have confirmed confidence in that person. And you'll have confirmed confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment because you're actually doing it. You'll see that you went from being angry or bitter or harsh or whatever it was that you were experiencing in terms of discontentedness. You'll see that gradually diminishing and your mind becoming more peaceful and more joyful. So you'll see that, yes, you're able to do it. You're able to build a meditation practice. You're able to learn intellectually. You're able to remember the teachings. You're able to apply them in your day-to-day life. So you'll have this confirmed confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment because you're actually doing it. You're making your way towards it. You see the improvement to the condition of your mind. So that's one of the ways that you'll know that doubt has been eliminated. You'll have deeply investigated the teachings of the Buddha, and you'll be experiencing significant improvements to the condition of the mind through having learned and practiced the teachings. Then you'll no longer be in search of a spiritual life because you already have found it, and you'll have 100% certainty in these teachings. You won't be out there looking around and checking this place and that place and running around. And if that's what you're doing now, fine, do all of that stuff. But eventually, if you practice these teachings close enough, you're going to see that they're working to improve improve the condition of your mind and your life, and you won't be out there searching for all these things. So the Buddha's not telling you what you should do. He's sharing with you, because this is the words of the Buddha, not exactly his words, but this is what he teaches, that once you have confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community, you won't be in search of a spiritual life anymore. He's not telling you what you should do. He's just sharing with you, once you eliminate your doubt, you will no longer be searching for a spiritual life, because you will have already found it, because you'll have seen that significant improvement to the condition of your mind. So you don't need to go out looking for other teachers or other books or other communities, because you will have found it, and you would know that this is this collection of teachings that's leading to the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. You will never give up on the development of your life practice, continuing to make improvements towards the attainment of enlightenment, with the teachings of the Buddha being your sole guide. Again, not telling you what you should do, but this is just what somebody will do as a result of having investigated the teachings so closely and examined them and experiencing the significant improvements. They'll just solely focus on the teachings of the Buddha. They won't be out there dabbling in all these other things, because that's just going to confuse your mind. You'll be fixed in these wholesome teachings, knowing that these are the teachings that are leading to your enlightenment, because you're already seeing some of the qualities of enlightenment shining through. Because remember, by the time somebody's getting to the first stage of enlightenment, they've already experienced those jhanas. They've already experienced those enhanced qualities of mind, the first, second, third, and fourth jhana. And those are persistent qualities that you're experiencing all day long, that are improved, enhanced qualities of mind above and beyond what you're experiencing at any other time in your life. So when you're seeing those jhanas start to be experienced, those enhanced qualities of mind, that's really starting to help you get rid of this doubt. Because when you read the words of the Buddha, and you know that he taught this 2,500 years ago, and here you are reading a text that's describing the qualities of mind that you're experiencing in this exact moment, this is where it really gets real for you, because you learned and practiced the Eightfold Path, you practiced it closely, and now you're starting to experience the exact qualities that he talked about 2,500 years ago and that are described in the jhanas. And now you'll know, like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I'm experiencing. And you're just checking off one by one these qualities. And this is what's going to help you to know that these teachings are the truth and help you eliminate your doubt. So in those jhanas, that's where things get really real for you, because you're starting to confirm the exact words that he shared. You're starting to experience those exact qualities. And it's helping you to be able to see his teachings are true. And now you just know, if I continue to learn and practice these teachings, it's going to lead to continued progress, because you've already seen significant progress at that point. You will have significantly reduced your complacency of the mind, because you'll have no doubt that these teachings are leading to improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. So you're not going to be complacent. You're not going to, go a whole week without meditating or something like that. There still can be some complacency in the mind after you've eliminated your doubt, but it's not going to be significant complacency where you're like, I'm not going to read those teachings of the Buddha. They don't really lead to enlightenment. That's what you'll do when you have doubt. But when you've eliminated your doubt, you won't do that. You'll be regularly reading and learning and growing. You might go through periods of time, a month or 2 or 3, where you're not maybe taking retreats or courses, or you're not necessarily reading. But during that time, you're still developing your practice. You're taking what you've learned and you're putting it into practice. And now in that 2, 3, 4 month period, however long it is, you're actually making forward progress in your practice, because you're taking the things that you've learned and you put them into practice. But you won't go like a week or 2 or 3 without meditating by the time you eliminate your doubt, because you'll know that that would be detrimental to the mind. Because in those jhanas, if you become complacent, your mind's going to regress. So if the mind still has doubt, it's not yet firmly in the first stage of enlightenment. So by the time you get rid of your doubt, you won't be complacent. And that's why by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, your mind's not going to regress, because you no longer have doubt. You're going to continue to make forward progress on the path. You'll have deep respect, politeness towards the Buddha, the teachings, the community, and your teacher. Again, this isn't telling you what you should do. This isn't like a criteria of judgment. Instead, this is just what somebody would do. This is what the Buddha shares. This is essentially what he's teaching you, that an individual who's eliminated their doubt, they'll have no doubt that these teachings are leading to improvement to the condition of their mind and their life, and they would have nothing but respect and politeness towards the people that are helping them to accomplish that. the Buddha, of course, having lived 2,500 years ago and shared these teachings, you'll have respect, nothing but respect for him, because you'll have seen the improvement to your mind and your life. The teachings themselves, the community that you're part of, the community members, you'll have nothing but loving kindness and politeness and respect towards all the people that are in your community. And your teacher, whoever you're learning from and that's helped you get to that first stage of enlightenment, you'll have nothing but politeness and respect towards that person. So do you guys have any questions on what is doubt and how to eliminate it?
I have a question if, for example, I guess it can happen that someone changes teacher through his life in Buddhism, right? Through his journey. Would it be possible to see, okay, if there's one teacher and then you have a lot of doubt, and then you go to another teacher and you feel like then your doubt is kind of fading away? Is it then wise to change to another teacher?
If you have eliminated your doubt, you won't switch to another teacher, because you will have gotten to the point where you have no doubt that it's this person that's helping you to get to enlightenment, because you'll have seen that improvement to your mind and to your life.
So if someone, let's say, is on the journey and is with one teacher, is get frustrated and maybe doubtful, and then maybe tries to switch to someone else, and then suddenly those things fade away and he's not doubtful anymore, that's the right decision to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if they get to a point where they have confidence in a particular teacher, then at that point, that's the teacher that they're going to continue to study with in order to be able to continue further. But they would have seen significant progress to their mind and their life to be able to eliminate that doubt. You're not going to just eliminate it through like talking to another community member, and that community member is like, oh, I experienced all kinds of progress on the path. Well, you haven't seen that yourself yet, and you would just be believing that person. So you would need to get to the point where you yourself have seen the significant improvement to your mind. And so that's where like you need to be able to learn with a certain teacher for a consistent period of time to be able to meet with that improvement. Whereas if somebody just kept bouncing around from teacher to teacher to teacher, they're not going to be able to be with any one teacher or any one collection of teachings long enough to be able to see improvement. So you need to give your mind enough time to be able to absorb a certain amount of teachings to be able to see that improvement. And then on the front side of that, you would like to know a bit about what enlightenment is and how to determine whether someone is or isn't enlightened, so that before you even choose to give maybe 6 months or a year of your time to learning a particular collection of teachings, that on the front side of that, you're just kind of looking at this teacher to try to observe whether they're either enlightened or very close to it. Because before you invest that 6 months or a year of time, you would like to have confidence, at least to the point of this person is potentially enlightened or close to it, before you even decide that you would like to spend that 6 months or year learning that collection of teachings.
But as a non-enlightened person, I cannot determine this, right? I cannot really know.
You can use these criteria that I'll share with you here. These are from the Buddha, and I can confirm that these work for you. Is that he suggests that you look at the person's mind, and he says that if the person has a muddled mind, meaning lacking concentration and clarity, that this person hasn't been practicing his teachings closely. Because if you have a muddled mind, it's because you have pollutions of your mind and you haven't practiced the teachings closely. So he suggests for you to look to see if someone has a muddled mind. So if you see concentration and focus and clarity and deep memory, that they can speak about the teachings with ease, then you can have confidence that this person is at least practicing the teachings to a certain degree. But then you can ask questions like, when's the last time you experienced anger, sadness, or frustration? Or is it possible to eliminate anger, or sadness, or frustration? You can ask those kinds of things. You can ask, what kind of students do you accept, and what kind of students do you reject? Because a teacher who's enlightened would accept all students. You can ask, is it possible to eliminate the ego? And if they say no, it's not possible to eliminate the ego, then they still have ego and they haven't gotten to enlightenment, and they haven't understood that that is part of the path. So in volume 1, chapter 3, at the very end, I give about 6 or 8 questions that you could ask a potential teacher, and also give the answers of what you could think that this person might say. You can ask them like, are you enlightened? Because a person who's enlightened wouldn't just answer, yes, and then just go on and on and on and on about why they are enlightened, kind of self-indulgent. They wouldn't just say those kinds of things. Instead, they would be more interested in helping you to understand what enlightenment is, rather than talk about their own mental state. So these are just some of the things, but you can see Volume 1, Chapter 3 for more details.
Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome. Did I see someone else have a question? No? Okay. Question? Yeah.
But so you say you can ask questions like, and all the questions you said. So if there is like no self, why master would deny his teachings to somebody? Like you said, you could ask like, what kind of students you don't accept,
Mm-hmm.
and for me that's interesting. Like, why a teacher would be like, okay, no, to you, no.
The reason why they would say no is because they have certain cravings, desires, attachments. In other words, if somebody is rejecting students, they wouldn't be enlightened or close to it. So therefore, that wouldn't be a teacher that you would be interested in learning from if they're rejecting certain students. Because anybody who's enlightened or close to it, they would accept any and all students. But if somebody's rejecting students, then that would be somebody that you, in my opinion, wouldn't be interested to learn with.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Peter. One thing I'd like to add in here before you ask your question, Peter, is, it's really normal to have doubt, as I mentioned. And one of the things that you can do is you can harness this doubt in a way that's actually going to be beneficial for you, right? You can turn that into an inquisitive mind. This is what I did, that I had a lot of doubt about whether these books that I was reading were actually the teachings of the Buddha or not, because I didn't know where these books came from. They were through all kinds of impermanence. The Buddha spoke 2,500 years ago, and what I was seeing was just paper with blotches of ink on the page, right? Essentially, that's what it was. Somebody had put some characters on this page. I didn't necessarily know it was or wasn't the teachings of the Buddha. So I had doubt whether or not these teachings were the actual teachings of the Buddha. So I turned it into an inquisitive mind where I rolled up the sleeves, I sunk the teeth in, and I really investigated these texts that I had access to determine whether or not they were the teachings of the Buddha or not. So that's one of the ways that you can really harness your doubt for a real positive improvement, is turn it into an inquisitive mind where you really sink in and investigate the teachings. And that's what's going to eliminate your doubt.
So many of us could be coming from previous teachers or having previous practices that are currently part of our life. And knowing that these practices have been very helpful, how do you kind of combine the teachings of the Buddha and the practices, the Buddhist teachings, with the existing practices that you might have, that for example, that are very helpful in your life?
Yeah, this is oftentimes very hard for people because they have done certain things in the realm of spiritual life, and when they come to the teachings of the Buddha, oftentimes those things are in direct conflict with the teachings of the Buddha. And you need to get to the point where you understand that these things have led you to where you are now in terms of being able to have access to the teachings of the Buddha and learn them. But where there's conflicts, you need to be able to talk with the teacher and try to understand why those conflicts are there, because there's most likely something that you're not seeing about these previous teachings that isn't actually helpful or beneficial, that someone could think that they were beneficial to a certain degree, but when they're conflicting with the teachings of the Buddha, I know with 100% certainty that the teachings of the Buddha will absolutely lead to your enlightenment. And whenever somebody is sharing something from a previous teacher that's in conflict with the teachings of the Buddha, I can show them how those things aren't going to actually lead to their enlightenment, but a student needs to decide to come talk to their teacher to understand that, so we can really drill into it. And that's where the mind needs to practice the intention of renunciation, where it has a willingness to let go of its false beliefs and false opinions and views, where you're not clinging to what you've done in the past. Because if your mind experiences anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, all those discontent feelings that I mentioned, then whatever you're currently understanding hasn't actually led to your enlightenment. So there are certain things in your mind that aren't true and that don't lead to your enlightenment. And you're going to need to be willing to let those go, even if you've learned them from another teacher, even if your current perception is that they have been helpful. You need to be able to really talk about them in a very sincere and objective way, that you're not just clinging to it because you've learned it from somebody else, but you can see very clearly why is it that you're learning and practicing any particular teaching. Because any particular aspect of the teachings of the Buddha, not only is it, here's what it is, here's why you're practicing it, and here's why it's going to lead to your enlightenment. You should be able to see that about any particular thing that you're practicing, because sometimes when people are sharing teachings, there's still a certain amount of belief that the mind does. It just kind of adopts this practice from this person without understanding the why behind it. And any teacher who's guiding you to enlightenment, helping you to cultivate wisdom independently of them, they should be able to explain to you the why behind it. So if you're ever practicing something that doesn't have a why behind it, and you don't understand how it factors into the overall path to enlightenment, then an individual could just be believing something, clinging to it. It's not necessarily leading to their enlightenment, and now it's in conflict with the teachings of the Buddha. But with a teacher who understands the path, they should be able to help you see those conflicts, and then helping you understand the why this thing that the Buddha taught is actually going to lead to your enlightenment, where this thing may not. And there probably are some things that you've learned in the past that are helpful. Like I know I learned from my grandmother. She said, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all, right? The Buddha never said that, but grandma said that. And that's exactly essentially what the Buddha is teaching you too, with right speech. So you can learn things from other people that are actually right in line with the teachings of the Buddha, but you need to be able to see that. But there are going to be certain things that you've learned that are in conflict with the teachings of the Buddha, and you need to be able to see that and understand the why, so then you feel more comfortable to let this one go and now start practicing the true reality. And then when you see the progress with that new thing, then you'll have confidence and you'll get rid of this doubt more and more, like, I was holding on to that for 5 years and I thought it was improving my life, but now that I'm doing this thing that the Buddha taught, this is so much better. And then you even have to be careful, because like there was a young lady here, I don't see her now, but we were at Hua Tung Tao, and she said that she's been studying a lot of different places and learning with even Buddhist monks. And she was saying that she's been meditating a certain way, and then she learned through the words of the Buddha this week to meditate the way the Buddha taught. And she said it was like a complete game changer, this one little thing. And she's been meditating this particular way, thinking that it was what the Buddha taught because she had learned it from Buddhist monks. And she realized here through the words of the Buddha that that wasn't the way that the Buddha taught. And then she said she just noticed significant benefit even just in the couple of days that she's been now practicing what the Buddha taught. So you're going to see conflicts not only with people outside the teachings of the Buddha, but even people who are currently considering what they teach to be the Buddha's teachings. When you see the actual real true teachings of the Buddha and you see those and you see conflicts, you're going to need to be able to discern why those conflicts are there, and then understand why it is that you need to be practicing this particular thing that the Buddha taught. And then that's going to really help you to make progress and more get rid of this doubt. Okay. Let me see if we have any questions online. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Okay, so I'm going to move into this next fetter. This one is pretty straightforward, right? The doubt, it's pretty straightforward, easy to explain, easy solution. Just keep investigating the teachings, investigating and examining. Don't believe any of the teachings. You won't get rid of your doubt through belief or blind faith. It's through investigation and examination, through reflecting to independently verify, and through practicing. When you're integrating those teachings into your life and you're actually practicing the tools and techniques the Buddha taught, you see the improvement to the condition of your mind. That's what's going to lead to the elimination of this doubt, because you'll see the progress that you're making. Okay, so the next one So I usually take that little 5-minute break and then we take a break there, but nonetheless, we'll go right into this. Okay, so now the next one is eliminating wrong behavior and observances. I refer to this as mastering moral conduct and the elimination of superstition. You'll understand why here in a moment. So what is wrong behavior and observances? There's two aspects to this particular fetter. One is there's unwholesome moral conduct that the mind is conducting. There are certain things that you're actually doing. Then there's the mind's belief that there's rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that will help you to attain enlightenment. This is a pollution of the mind. So the wrong behavior part of it is the unwholesome moral conduct. This is kind of like, as long as you're putting out the unwholesome moral conduct into the world, this is all going to be coming back to you. So if you're bitter and harsh and hostile and argumentative and resentful and disrespectful to people around you, this is all going to come back to you. You're not going to be able to get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life as long as you're spewing that all over the world, because every time you turn around, someone's being bitter and harsh and hostile to you, right? So it's kind of like the pipe has busted and you've got all this oil spewing all over the world, and you would like to close down the pipe. Before you go clean up the mess that's on the floor, you got to close down the pipe, right? So the Buddha is teaching you a certain level of moral conduct in the Eightfold Path to close down the pipe so that you're not putting out this harmful conduct. So in the Eightfold Path, there's teachings there that are going to help you. That's essentially the solutions that we'll get to. So the problem here, the pollution of the mind, is that there's unwholesome moral conduct. Then the other part, this wrong observances, this is where the mind believes that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship are going to somehow magically lead to purification of your mind and an improved life. This is a pollution of the mind if the mind believes this kind of thing. Symptoms of this are that you're going to see that there's no practice of right speech, right action, and right livelihood from the Eightfold Path, because that's the moral conduct that you need to practice in order to get rid of this fetter. So if you're not practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood, you're causing harm. So now this harm is going to come back to you. You're going to see that you have bitter and harsh relationships. There's going to be hostility in your relationships. You're going to have difficulties and struggles as you're interacting with the people around you. This is because of the wrong behavior. Oftentimes what we do is we blame what we experience on other people, and we think that that's the reason why this person's being bitter and harsh and hostile. But you need to look at your conduct in those relationships. If you have parents or siblings or friends or family, co-workers, neighbors, that you're having difficulties in those relationships, you need to look at your conduct and the way that you're practicing in order to clean that up. So the symptom that you're going to see is that you're going to see that you're not practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood. That's for the wrong behavior part of it. For the wrong observances part, you're going to consider that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship are important for your spiritual development. And you might even be indulging in these kinds of things where you're going to maybe some particular person, getting some water sprinkled on you, or doing some kind of things like this where there's some kind of ritual or ceremony that's being done, and you're thinking that somehow this is going to improve your life, right? So this is rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and that's one of the symptoms of having wrong observances. Then in terms of cleaning this up, the solutions is develop a develop practice of the Eightfold Path's moral conduct section, the right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So just as a recap, what right speech is, from the top level of right speech, is eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. All of these things are based in craving, desire, attachment. And as long as your mind has that longing, yearning to crave and desire attachment, you're going to produce speech that is unwise. You're going to lie. Because when we lie, it's because we have a craving that's inside the mind that you want something. And if you tell the truth, you're not going to get it. So you need to get to the point where you're only speaking the truth. And now this is going to improve your moral conduct and improve your relationships. You need to get to the point where you're not slandering or gossiping other people, because again, there's a craving there. The mind wants to look good in front of other people, and the mind thinks, if I can diminish other people and make them look bad, then I will look better. The mind has a little bit of personal existence view in there with this one as well, right? So you would like to get to the point where you're not slandering and gossiping, because at the very least, when you have your back turned, people are going to be gossiping and slandering about you. But at the height of this, people can murder you, right? If you gossip and slander to a certain degree, you can actually get murdered. You can get beat up. You can get your material possessions destroyed. This is the cause and effect of you putting out unwise moral conduct. Then the harsh speech is like the bitterness, the hostility, the animosity. This is, again, coming from craving, desire, attachment. If you want your children to do things a certain way, if you want your life partner to do things a certain way, or other people around you, you'll talk really harsh and bitter and hostile, trying to kind of almost fear them into doing things your way. But when you get rid of those cravings, using the mental discipline section, you'll also be able to then speak in more wise ways where you're not being harsh and bitter and hostile. And then what frivolous speech is where you just have idle chatter, where the mind is just like yada, 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 yada. It's not really a conversation. It's more like broadcast. You're broadcasting to people. So you would like to have a conversation where you speak for a little bit and then you pause and let another person speak. And then they speak and then you speak. It's a nice conversation rather than just rambling for 15, 20, 30 minutes, right? This will help that other person to be able to be interested in having a conversation with you. If you were just rambling for 15, 20, 30 minutes, unpurposefully, unbeneficially, people aren't going to be interested in speaking with you. So you would like to get to the point where you don't have frivolous speech. And this is going to help you to eliminate any underlying craving that's in the mind that's motivating that frivolous speech. So these are the 4 things at the level of right speech that you need to purify in order to get rid of this wrong behavior. Now, I taught you guys the 5 factors of well-spoken speech also. That's not part of this fetter. That's a deeper teaching that you're definitely going to need in order to get to enlightenment. But just to get rid of this particular fetter of wrong behavior, you just need to be practicing speech to that level of eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But then, of course, you would wisely dive into this deeper where you're practicing speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. And I explain what each one of those are, and I explain it in the book too, in volume 1, chapter 5. You'll be able to see in there how I describe those 5 factors, because you would like to pay attention to those and dial those in closer and closer and closer. Then right action is where you're not causing harm through your bodily actions. And in order to eliminate wrong behavior, you just need to eliminate the 3 that are in the Eightfold Path of eliminating killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And remember, we talked about this in relationship to the 5 precepts, that it's not preserve all life at all costs, right? There's going to be a situation perhaps where you're living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, but maybe you need to eradicate those termites in your home. So you're living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. You're not just preserving all life at all costs. So in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha talks about abstaining from killing. What he's talking about here is the first precept from the 5 precepts, that you live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. You're not intentionally go out into the world with craving, with anger and ignorance to actively kill, where you're intending to kill and wanting to kill. But if these beings, if these termites are eating your home and you need to eradicate them in order to show loving kindness and compassion to this being who you are, you're still practicing that precept. You're still practicing right action. You're still practicing living compassionately. So when you see the Eightfold Path where the Buddha talks about abstaining from killing, you need to be sure you bring in that first precept from the 5 precepts and understand what he's talking about there more fully is to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings, that there are going to be rare situations where even an enlightened being may end up killing, but they're not doing it with craving, anger, and ignorance. They're doing it with compassion in terms of this particular being of the termites. You've done some research to try to figure out how can I actually eradicate these termites without actually killing them. And what you might come back with is, these beings need to be eliminated, and there's no way for me to actually eliminate them other than hiring this person to come do this work, right? So then the next one was the stealing, right? Of course, an individual who's practicing right action isn't going to steal. There's a certain amount of craving and longing, yearning there, that the mind wants this thing and you can't get it for yourself, so you might steal it. This is going to cause harm, so therefore harm is going to come back to you. And then the sexual misconduct, again, there's the 5 precepts there that really explain what sexual misconduct is, and we went through that in a lot of detail. Then there's right livelihood. This is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. We talked about this, where there's 5 livelihoods that are going to cause harm, which is business and weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. You would like to be sure you're not doing any of those, because anytime you're practicing those, it's going to cause harm, and then that harm's going to come back to you. Remember, none of this stuff is rules or commandments. The Buddha is showing you this cause and effect, or this action and result. It's the natural law of karma. So when you base your livelihood off of causing harm to others, that harm's going to come back to you. So you would like to clean up your livelihood where you're not causing harm through any of those things, that you're not having business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness or poisons. And then there's the way that you conduct your livelihood, that you've eliminated scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. That's the first fold of purification. And that's what somebody would have eliminated to get to the elimination of wrong behavior. But then in order to get to enlightenment, you're going to need to understand the second fold of purification with your right livelihood. And all of those details for the first fold of purification are in volume 1, chapter 5, because it's part of the Eightfold Path. The second fold of purification, and even the first fold of purification, is in volume 12, chapter 14. If you look in volume 12, chapter 14, you're going to see the first fold and the second fold of purification for right livelihood. But to get rid of this wrong behavior, you just need to eliminate the first fold. You need to purify to the first fold for right livelihood. And that way, your livelihood is quite stable, but you might not be in your completely right livelihood just yet. Okay, so this is to eliminate the wrong behavior part. Then to eliminate the wrong observances part, you need to eliminate the belief that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship are leading to any kind of purification of the mind, or even any improvement in your life, so to speak. This is something that you're doing in the mind. Whether you actually choose to do any of these things or not is a choice for you to make. Maybe you're around family members at a holiday. Maybe people are like, hey, let's go to church and have communion. Or, hey, let's go to the synagogue and do this particular ceremony. Or, hey, let's go to the mosque and do this particular thing. And maybe you go hang out with your family because it's a family event. You enjoy spending time with your family. Maybe everybody's doing all these ceremonies and rituals at this place that you've gone to. But in your mind, you know that this isn't what's leading to your enlightenment. So whether you actually go to these things or not, that's up to you to decide. It's your life and your decisions. But your mind will know that these things aren't leading to enlightenment. And that's how you get rid of this particular fetter, is your mind needs to be able to see what is the actual problem that the Buddha discovered. He discovered that ignorance, or that unknowing of true reality. And then he showed you that dependent origination of how, by cultivation of wisdom, that's what's going to lead to the elimination of discontentedness. So there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship that's going to lead to the cultivation of wisdom. So you need to know that intellectually, and then that's getting rid of this particular fetter. And some people have actually eliminated this before they've actually even come to study with me, because they've already done rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship other places. And they learned that David doesn't do those things, and they actually have already eliminated that part of the fetter before they've ever actually learned with me. So this is the Eightfold Path, and you're going to need to master this moral conduct section in order to get rid of the wrong behavior. And I just kind of walked you through that in a summary way so that you could understand it. So let me now talk about belief versus wisdom, because this is what's going to help you to eliminate your wrong observances, is understand the difference between belief and wisdom. With belief, you don't know what's true or false, or right or wrong. You're just believing it because somebody else convinced you to believe it, or you convinced yourself to believe it. The mind might be clinging to a certain perception about a particular belief. It's clinging to this particular perception and thinking that this thing is actually true, when in reality it's just a belief. So a perception is a belief or opinion based on how things seem to be, and it may or may not actually be true if you're clinging to a certain perception or belief. What wisdom is where you've independently verified something through your own direct experiences, where you've learned something intellectually, you've reflected on it, and then you've practiced it to independently verify whether something is true or false. If you're getting to truth, this is something that can be confirmed without the teacher's presence, right? Like if I give you some information about the universal truth of impermanence, and I teach you that in a few minutes, you can go out into the world and you can independently verify it without your teacher even being around. That's how you know that's wisdom, that's a universal truth. The universal truth of discontentedness, I can teach it to you, and then you can look at your own direct experiences and you can confirm that that's true. The Four Noble Truths, I can teach that to you, and then you can learn it and practice it. You can independently verify it through observing through your own direct experiences. When you get to wisdom, you'll have 100% confidence that this particular thing is true because you verified it on your own. You're not actually believing it, but you've confirmed it through your own verification. So that's what wisdom is. So there's knowledge, which is like intellectual learning, but then there's wisdom when you deeply understand something because you've independently verified it. And that's what you're looking to get to, is you're looking to get to wisdom in all aspects of your practice, because then your mind can be stable and steady. If you're building your practice off of belief, well, that can easily be shaken up. I don't know how many of you guys grew up with the belief in Santa Claus. I know I did. And I grew up with this belief in Santa Claus. And when I was 8 years old, my world was shaken up. I found out that mom and dad were the ones eating those cookies and drinking the milk. And my world was shaken up. And I was really upset, right? So you can easily get shaken up when you find out that your beliefs are not true, right? So that's what you're trying to avoid here by getting to enlightenment, is where your mind is stable and steady and you know the truth about the natural laws of existence around you, and your mind's not going to be shaken up because you've independently verified each one of these natural laws in the teachings that the Buddha is sharing with you. And you do that through the acquiring of wisdom. Okay, so now I'd like to ask you guys some questions, and I'd like you to answer me, because we might be able to help you get rid of a portion of this fetter right here today. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. What's the number one and primary problem that is keeping the mind in the unenlightened state and in the cycle of rebirth? Ignorance, right? That's the number one problem. That's what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. What solves this problem? Investigate for what? What are you trying to acquire? I think I heard it. Wisdom, right? You're trying to acquire wisdom. Okay. How do rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship help a practitioner to transform the mind's problem of ignorance into wisdom? It doesn't, right? How does it do that? Okay. What rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship will help a practitioner to transform this problem? None, right? So if you follow this and you can see that really clearly, okay, you've gotten rid of that part. But you got to deeply understand that in your mind and maintain that throughout your life, to understand that there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that can transform your mind and allow it to acquire wisdom. So you're going to need to be able to see that. And if you can't see this right now, walk yourself through this over multiple days until the point where you can actually see that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't lead to wisdom. There's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to give you wisdom. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that's going to give you wisdom. There's no amount of any kind of ceremony like that I can do that's going to give you wisdom. There's no way for me to download that wisdom to you, right? It's just not possible, right? So perhaps you've gotten rid of this portion of the fetter already, okay? So belief does not lead to wisdom. It doesn't lead to awakening of the mind to enlightenment. There are no auspicious or superstitious aspects of the path to enlightenment. Those are actually the words of the Buddha. I paraphrase it, of course, but he says there's no auspicious or superstitious aspects of the path to enlightenment. You'll see that in his own words if you study his teachings. So the goal and objective is to acquire wisdom. That's the antidote that's going to transform the mind away from the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. So you need to get to the point where you never believe anything at all. That's what's going to help you to be able to keep the mindset to be investigating and examining, to reflect, independently verify, and practice. And now you can get to the truth and you can see wisdom, and that's what's going to lead to your awakening. Okay. What is this one? Okay, how to know whether the wrong behavior in observances is eliminated. Okay, the way you're going to know that wrong behavior is eliminated is you will deeply understand and be able to explain right speech, right action, and right livelihood. right? You'll be able to rattle that off, right? Oh, right speech, that's eliminating lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. Oh, right action, that's eliminating the killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. And of course, to get to enlightenment, you need to eliminate all bodily actions that are causing harm. But just to get rid of this, you need to get rid of that. And then there's the livelihood that I've already talked about, right? You'd be able to explain that. And you would have fully developed a practice of this for at least 1 year. You'll see that over 1 year of doing this, you will clean up your unwholesome karma. Because remember, any decisions you made in the past where you were lying, you were slandering, you were using harsh speech, you were using frivolous speech, that karma has to come back to you because you caused that harm. Or you maybe caused harm through your bodily actions, or you were causing harm through your livelihood. You're going to need to go at least 1 year where you're practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood, because now as that unwholesome karma is coming back to you, you're going to extinguish it through practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood. So you're going to need at least a minimum of 1 year practicing that. And then in terms of knowing that you've eliminated wrong behavior and observances, it would be impossible for you to acknowledge any rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship would actually lead to enlightenment. Again, whether you do those or not, that's a choice for you to make. You might be with family, friends, hanging out, whatever, but you just know in your mind that these things aren't leading to enlightenment. And you might just be joining the family for some event because it's a holiday or what have you, but your mind knows that these things aren't leading to enlightenment. Okay, so this is how to know that you've eliminated this particular fetter. So any questions on this? You have a question? Yep, you have a question? Mm-hmm.
So maybe not that directly related to this, but my question is, in the original Buddhist teachings, is there anything related to gender differences in terms of the path to enlightenment?
There aren't any. There'll be people that will tell you that there is.
Yes.
There's some people that will tell you women can't get to enlightenment.
Yes.
This is absolutely untrue. There's never a time where the Buddha ever said that at all. A female's mind actually works exactly the same as a man's mind in terms of craving, anger, and ignorance. The contents in our mind are different, but that's unique to every individual, not just gender, but even within one gender, we'll have different contents in our mind. But the way that the mind functions and whether it has these 10 pollutions or not, it's exactly the same for a man or a woman.
Okay, thank you.
Everybody can get to enlightenment. If you have the ability to learn intellectually, you can get to enlightenment. If somebody has some kind of challenge that they were born with or they developed during their life where they can't learn intellectual information, they wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment in that life. They would then need to be experiencing rebirth to get to a point where they have the faculties to be able to take in information and intellectually learn, and then they could actually put the work into practice. They could still get to enlightenment at death, right? This person who wasn't able to intellectually learn during their life, they could still get to enlightenment at death. That's a possibility, but they wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment during their life because they don't have the ability to bring in the intellectual learning to then be able to practice. But if you have the ability to intellectually learn, which all of you guys do, you'd be able to get to enlightenment in this life. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to. You just need to apply the dedication, the determination, diligence to do the work, and then you'll be able to make your way to enlightenment. So whether you have a certain gender, like male, female, or you don't consider yourself to be any gender at all, whether you prefer same gender relationships or opposite gender relationships, anybody can get to enlightenment. And the Buddha says this in his teachings, not in the detailed way that I did, but he says anybody can get to enlightenment. That's what he says. So I just kind of made it a bit more detailed for you so you can see the truth on this, that you need to be able to cultivate wisdom. That's why an individual needs to be able to intellectually learn to be able to get to enlightenment.
My question is there are some meditation camp that provide intensively, by example, 10 days meditation where you're going to meditate all day. And do you think it's more important to maybe do these 3 meditations per day in our daily life? Do you think this type of meditation camp is helpful that we try to meditate intensely? I want to know your opinion about it.
These kind of questions would be really great for our closing discussion. Why don't we wait until then so that we can just have a really nice closing discussion, because this is a great question for that. So can you bring that up at our closing discussion? It's going to be after lunch. Yeah, you have some help to remember it here. Questions on this?
Talking about the rituals, why wouldn't I consider that walking meditation 2 times a day counterclockwise in a certain way with the feet, looking and keeping my mind in a certain state? Why wouldn't it be considered a ritual?
With walking meditation, what you're doing is you're training your mind. You're training your mind to acquire mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're training your mind to develop concentration and train the mind to let go of craving, desire, attachment. Sometimes students ask me about, do I need to walk counterclockwise? And I explain to them, no, you don't have to. You can get the same benefits from walking clockwise. So it's not about whether you walk counterclockwise or clockwise. It's about what you're doing with the mind to train the mind. And you're cultivating wisdom to be able to know how to do that. There's no ritual involved with walking meditation or any other thing that I'm doing. Even the chanting that I'm doing. Some people say, isn't that a ritual? And the way that you see that I teach chanting is it's a way to ease the mind into meditation. And I explain to people that there's nothing mystical or magical about the chanting whatsoever. So there's nothing that I teach that is a ritual, but instead it's all about training the mind and coming back to producing certain qualities of mind. That's what the walking meditation is doing, is it's producing certain qualities of mind through training of the mind versus just sprinkling some water on you. There hasn't been any cultivation of wisdom. There hasn't been any cultivation of qualities of mind that are going to enhance your life. It's just sprinkling water on you. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So my wife is Catholic, and sometimes I go to church with her. So it's like an hour-long ceremony, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm kind of bored. So I feel like, all these things that they're talking about, I don't really connect with because I'm not really thinking about it. I'm kind of like believing it, so to speak. But I feel like, on the other hand, I'm cultivating a lot of stuff. So I'm cultivating patience, cultivating acceptance of different religions, stuff like that. So wouldn't that be helpful in some ways as well?
Yeah, exactly. Why is that boredom coming in there? What causes boredom?
Discomfort, not wanting to be there.
Craving, desire, attachment. So one of the things that you do to eliminate a craving, desire, attachment where the mind's repulsed by something is you put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. But it's not the rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that's helping you with that. You're there cultivating your mind, training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. So if they're doing communion or anything else, they're sprinkling holy water. When you go in, you do the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Those things by themselves aren't cultivating any wisdom. It's not helping you to make wiser decisions in your life. Because remember, what's at the core of all of this is these natural laws of the natural law of Gamma, of cause and effect, or action and result, making wise decisions in one's life. And even Jesus taught this too. Jesus taught you reap what you sow. This is the natural law of Gamma, of cause and effect, or action and result. And that's what, in my opinion, would be really wise for Christians to be teaching more and more of, is the wisdom of how to make wise decisions in their life, because that's what Jesus taught. But sometimes, even with Jesus' teachings, they've experienced impermanence, just like the teachings of the Buddha, because we're 2,000 years away from the death of Jesus, and now people aren't necessarily teaching his teachings the way he taught them. So people going to church, they have become rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. That's what a lot of people focus on. They might focus on belief, but where the real benefit of Jesus' teachings is understanding the wisdom in them and how to actually apply them in your day-to-day life through your practice. So that's what one would benefit from in Christianity. The rituals aren't actually going to help anything. But with you approaching your experience at the church the way you are is to help eliminate craving, cultivate patience and stuff like that. That's helping you. But just understand that the rituals that they're performing, they're not actually helping. So it's the cultivation of the mind that's going to help you, not the rituals.
Right. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
So one of the things that always comes up is as you're developing wisdom, all the pieces of the path are being verified, including the different types of beings out there and the past lives. If you haven't felt that, or will you feel that at some point on the path, how do you truly verify that?
Yeah, what I suggest people to do with the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence and things like that is just set it to the side, and just continue to focus on the core central teachings, the 3 universal truths, 4 noble truths, Eightfold Path, 5 precepts, meditation training, all those things, the elimination of the fetters. You focus on these core central teachings, and then as your pollution of your mind starts to be eliminated, it's not uncommon for people to see formless beings, to see hell beings or afflicted spirits like ghosts or heavenly beings, or hear communication of those beings and things like this, or at some point have experiences where they're able to confirm these things. As you've heard me mention, volume 11, chapter 105 has the confirmation of the way to confirm the cycle of rebirth in the 5 realms. It's there's 17 different things. One of those things is to understand dependent origination and deeply penetrate into that. So oftentimes people aren't necessarily verifying the cycle of rebirth in the 5 realms of existence until they're in the 1st or 2nd stage, or maybe even the 3rd stage of enlightenment, because there's so much other work to really be involved in. Because what's happened in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter right now. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter. So I would just focus on the core central teachings, and then if you start having experiences related to the cycle of rebirth in the 5 realms, you'll understand it and your mind won't be shaken up by it. And you're always welcome to reach out. I'm here to help as you experience these things, but you'll understand it and your mind won't be shaken up by it. And then you'll have that confirmation. But it's not something you have to go out and try to initiate. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. You don't have to initiate those kinds of things. But ultimately, when you get to volume 11, chapter 105, you'll be able to see all of those things that are there to help you confirm the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence. But you don't have to jump to that at any point in time. Just wait until your mind's ready for that.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Jeannie?
Hello? This is a lot of information to take in. Are there certain steps and where you start? And like at the Eightfold Path, or you start with the precepts or the 4 noble truths, or?
Yeah, I don't think you were here when I was sharing this. I was sharing with people that when we got to this certain point in the retreat, I shared with them that they may be interested to just stay with the 3 universal truths, 4 noble truths, Eightfold Path, 5 precepts, and meditation training. And even these other things that I'm teaching now, they might not be there in their practice. And it's okay to learn them and get exposed to them. But in terms of what you're going to develop after the retreat, it would be the core central teachings that I just mentioned. And that's where a lot of people will be, depending on where they are in their practice. Mm-hmm.
I have a question related to the wholesome result and unwholesome result, this type of thing.
Is it related to this?
No.
No.
Okay, then I cannot.
Let's do it. Yeah, we're
Really?
going to have a closing discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is that I remember I can understand, like when you say if you treat other people bad, and this can come back to you as unwholesome result. Like if you cheat on your boyfriend, then it will cause you lots of psychological problems. But I remember, like by example, if you win a lottery, and I remember you said it's not about luck, it's a wholesome result. But I cannot see the connection. I think winning a lottery is just a matter of luck and coincidence. I don't see like what it's just I cannot verify what he did before to lead to this consequence. Like it's the process that I cannot verify. I cannot investigate to know if it's true.
Yeah, again,
you understand?
Yeah, again, this is good for the closing discussion, but I'll just add that I didn't say that winning the lottery is a wholesome result. I didn't say that. So let's talk about it during the closing discussion. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What's exactly a ritual, and why it cannot help us to reach enlightenment?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What is a ritual, and why it cannot help us to reach enlightenment?
What's that word? I didn't hear
A
you.
ritual. My R sounds weird, I guess. Ritual.
Oh, ritual. Why can't a ritual help
Yeah,
you?
what is it, and why it cannot? Both.
What is it?
What is it, and why it cannot help us to reach enlightenment?
Yeah, a ritual is kind of like an auspicious act, some kind of like ceremony, or like, sprinkling water, or like here in Thailand, they have this little urn where they pour out water into a little bowl. They think they're transferring merit. There's all kinds of different ceremonies and rituals. Here, if you come during New Year's, the monks have these bamboo poles that they organize in a tripod, and then they will have a string that connects to the statue of the Buddha, and then the members of the community come in and they wrap this string around their head, and they sit there and they pray to the Buddha, and they think that this string has some kind of energy from the statue of the Buddha that's going to come into their head and help them to do things better in the world. These are all certain rituals or ceremonies that an individual would do. And it's not cultivating wisdom. It's just some kind of act or some kind of thing that it has no ability for you to improve your decision making in your day-to-day life.
Well, those are like examples of rituals, but I mean, according to those examples, I think then maybe a ritual would be to follow like some specific actions. So I guess you could find like superstition rituales, where like the ones you mentioned, where you put, I don't know, something in the head and believe an angel, something. But yeah, like I don't know what's his name, but he said like why meditation would be considered like a ritual, because I think about like all the examples you put, and I think like if you try to go further than that and put like in words what it's a ritual more than giving examples, would be just to follow like some actions. Like my ritual is to wake up and brush my teeth every day and wash my face, and I consider that a ritual because I do it daily, and that is helping me to I don't know, to have a better skin in my face.
Yeah, so if you were trying to get a clean mouth, you could brush your teeth and that will give you clean teeth. Or if I just sprinkled water on you, that's not going to lead to your refreshing mouth and a lack of cavities, right? You have to actually do something to cultivate the clean mouth. Same thing with the mind, is you have to actually do something to cultivate the mind with mindfulness and concentration. You need the wisdom of how to do that. Just sprinkling water on you isn't going to cultivate your mind with wisdom. Just like sprinkling water on you isn't going to help you get a clean mouth. You actually have to do something, which is actually put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, put it in your mouth, and actually do some kind of action to cultivate a clean mouth.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that's the ritual, to put the toothpaste in the, like I would guess that there are some rituals that can work, like where you use I don't know, like we can make a ritual or daily meditation a ritual, right? Not
in my
really.
opinion, brushing your teeth is not a ritual. It's an action that you're doing, and there's real things that are happening, right? Same thing with meditation, is you're cultivating your mind, you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities. There's no ritual in the meditation whatsoever. You're actually cultivating wholesome qualities and eliminating unwholesome qualities, and that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment, not a ritual.
So I don't know. I look for the definition of ritual on Google, and it appears like it's a repeated action, or something like that. So I guess we just have different perspectives of ritualism.
It's not, a ritual is not just a repeated action. That's not what a ritual is. Yeah.
So what it is?
I just described it for you.
But you put an example of a ritual.
Okay, let me see. Let me look at a dictionary.
Okay, thank you. RITE.
Okay, the dictionary that I'm using, and you're using a different dictionary, and because of impermanence, it's going to say something different.
Yeah.
This says a religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order, related to or done as a religious or solemn rite. Right, so that's the dictionary that I'm using.
Okay.
So, doing a brushing of your teeth is not a ritual.
Okay.
That's not
Thank
a
you.
ritual.
Okay, David. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now-
Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So sometimes when you're trying to verify a truth or to develop a wisdom, it might take many years that a person can really struggle during this process. Is it normal? I'm just wondering, does it happen? Does it ever happen to you?
Yeah, of course. There's going to be challenges on the path to enlightenment. It's not just a forward progression like this and everything's peachy and wonderful. While getting to enlightenment, the mind is going to be experiencing that peace and that joy and that ease of life. There's struggles and difficulties along the way. Even the Buddha talks about this. His teaching is to don't shrink back from the struggle. Right? Because oftentimes when the mind meets with a struggle, it will try to run away from it. But if you do that, you're just ensuring that that struggle is going to continue because you never cultivated the wisdom you needed to overcome the struggle. The only reason why the mind struggles is because it lacks wisdom. If you had wisdom of this situation, you wouldn't struggle in that situation. So if you shrink back from the struggle or run away from it, you're ensuring that's going to happen again because the mind never cultivated the wisdom that it needed to overcome that struggle. But if when you're meeting with struggles, instead of running away, you turn around and walk towards the struggle, now you can cultivate the wisdom. Walking towards the struggle would be reading the books and talking to a teacher and getting the help that you need to be able to cultivate the needed wisdom to be able to overcome that. And that's why a rite, ritual, ceremony, and worship isn't going to help you to overcome any particular struggle because you haven't cultivated any wisdom to overcome it. So you will meet with plenty of struggles, but this is the last struggle of all struggles. If you can work through this struggle and through this challenge of getting to enlightenment, life will be at ease. You won't have any struggles in life any longer. And that comes through the cultivation of wisdom, not through rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship.
Just sometimes I can't tell if it's one of my craving because I feel like I want to really do something, I want to achieve it, but because there's a lot of difficulties, I feel hesitating doing it. So my struggle was like for the past years, I wanted to do something, but because of the difficulties, I feel like I'm moving really slow. So sometimes I started to think, should I just give it up? Because this can be one of my cravings. And I started to get confused. I don't know if it's my craving or it is something that I should really do it. Because if I don't achieve it, I will never know what is it. I'm really...
If you achieve it, would you be happy?
I think I would be happy if I achieve it.
And if you didn't achieve it, would you be sad?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So
okay, so that's a craving. Yeah. Because the mind's forming its inner feelings based on whether you accomplish it or not. And we're using that word want a lot in your description. That's what the mind's going to do when it's describing one of its cravings, desires, attachments. You're going to hear it talking about want or expectations. Like if you guys notice, I don't know if you noticed, been around me this week, I don't say, do you guys want to go on an excursion? I'll say things like, would you like to go on the excursion? Or this is a possibility, or I'm inviting you to go on this excursion, right? I don't say, I want you to go to this excursion, or I expect you to do this. I don't use those words because that's not how the mind thinks. The mind is inviting you and saying, would you like to do this? Are you interested to do this? And this is where you would like to take your own internal dialogue, where you're not wanting this particular thing, but you are interested in working towards this goal, or you would like to accomplish this objective. And it's not just a matter of changing your language. You got to change the way the mind thinks internally. And then you'll be able to more easily navigate your way to it as a true goal, objective, or interest, and not form your feelings on whether you accomplish it or not.
So you mean that if I would be enjoying the whole process, it means that I can do it, right?
Yeah, you can enjoy.
There's no, if I can enjoy the process, there's no craving anymore, right?
It's possible to enjoy something without craving, desire, attachment. You can do that. The mind needs to learn how to do that. One of the things that I used to do is I used to set goals for myself that I knew I couldn't achieve in order to train my mind to not form its feelings based on goals, objectives, or interest. Sometimes I would surprise myself and get the goal anyway, but I wouldn't get happy or excited about it. But oftentimes I would set goals intentionally that I knew that I would have no possibility of actually acquiring. And that way, if I got 60, 70, 80% of the goal, I would have to look at that and say, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to extend my timeline here? Am I going to add resources? Or am I just completely fine with that 80%? And I had to do that repeatedly in order to train my mind not to form its inner feelings on whether I accomplished this thing or not. So those are some things that you can do in order to help you to see what a true goal is. Because even though people are calling something a goal, it's really a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. Because that's why I asked you, like, if you got it, would you be happy? And if you didn't get it, would you be sad? And you answered yes. So that means that's not a goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. That's a craving that the mind's having. It's not an actual goal, because if it was a true goal, you wouldn't be forming your feelings on it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. Looks like we have a question coming in on Zoom. Looks like Roxanne. Okay, Roxanne, Teacher David, do you think that our lives are linear? I'm not sure what you mean by that, Roxanne. Can you add some more details to that? I'll be pleased to answer that for you. Or if you'd like to raise your hand since you're in Zoom, you're welcome to unmute your mic, and then we can just kind of hear what your question is. Let's see if we're going to get, there we go.
Oh, here I am. As we progress through our lives, be it in human or other form, are these all linear in time, space and time?
They're one after another, so they're serial. So there's a complete life that is lived from beginning to end, and when that life is over, then there's another life. And there can be a long gap between these. I've seen as long as 500 to 2,000 years between lives, because remember, the planet has been here, in our best estimate, for 4.5 billion years. So when we think about how the Buddha lived 2,500 years ago, sometimes people think this is so long ago, but that's like a blink of an eye compared to how long this earth has been here. That's just really a short period of time. So you can have these long gaps between lives, but they're serial. They're not parallel or linear.
Well, but I mean, they're in linear, I mean that if you start at, 20,000 BC and end up here today, your lives have been sequentially in time.
Yes, that's correct.
Not back and forth in different time periods.
Yes, that's correct, because there isn't ability to go back to the past or forward to the future, because the past doesn't exist any longer. The only thing that actually exists is right now. The future doesn't exist yet. The past doesn't exist. It's already done and over with. So there's no ability to go backwards and have a life in the past, because that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So I'm not seeing any other questions. So we've gotten to a point now where it's time to take our little lunch. And normally we get back together at 2:00 because we're taking break for lunch around 12:30. But we can actually come back within an hour and a half, which means that we could start our class at 1:00. And that'll give you an hour and a 40-minute lunch break. And then we can start at 1:00, and we'll just finish a bit early today. So if you guys would like to take a break, we'll come back at 1:00. And when we come back, we're going to do this meditation to realize non-self again, so you guys can practice that and get some experience with it. Then I'm going to teach you how to determine if you've attained the first stage of enlightenment. I'm going to teach you how to integrate what you've learned into your day-to-day life. I'm going to teach you how to get continued support. And then we're going to have a closing discussion where you guys can ask any and all questions that you like. So enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys at 1 o'clock. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay.